Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm senior literary agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
Hello, everybody. Today we have with us thriller author Simon Wood, and we are excited and fans. So, Nicki, will you tell us about Simon?
Yes, of course. So, USA Today bestselling author Simon Wood is a California transplant from England. He's a former competitive race car driver, a licensed pilot, an endurance cyclist, an animal rescuer, and an occasional PI. He shares his world with his American wife, Julie. Their lives are dominated by a long-haired Deshaun and 6 cats. He's the Anthony Award-winning author of The One That Got Away, Paying the Piper, Terminated, Deceptive Practices, and the Addie Westlake series. He's a regular contributor to Writer's Digest and other writer magazines. He also writes horror under the pen name of Simon Janus. Welcome, Simon. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to dive right in because we just have lots of questions to pick your brain. But first, we have got to know how you found a career in writing after being a race car driver, pilot, cyclist, etc. So, and like, how did all those careers influence your writing career?
The reason I started writing is when I moved to the US. I'd had inklings of story ideas and things, but it wasn't until I came to the US because everybody said, "Oh, don't worry, you'll walk into a job when you get here." And I walked into a wall, and I just had a lot of time on my hands. And so it was just a thing of going, I don't think I'll ever be given the time to commit to it full time, as it were. So it was basically that is I thank the Immigration and Naturalization Service for putting roadblocks. They're responsible for a writing career.
That's a great way to look at it, a positive spin on it. So, has your past careers like influenced your stories?
Yeah, I have a small talent for calamity. A lot of the things that I've done in life end up as pieces in the books or the core idea behind something. So the 80 Westlake books are based on my racing career. I'm a fan of Dick Francis, so I wanted to do the similar thing that he did to horse racing and show you like what on TV looks like this, what goes around behind it is a completely different story. So there were so many weird things that you witnessed personally or someone else saw. And so those things came in. The first book is based on a driver who died at a track, and I was one of the last people to ever speak to him. And he's told me something that I never told anybody for 20 years until the book, because I could not tell everybody something that was even worse than the situation that was. He told me a secret that would be heartbreaking to everybody in his family.
Mm.
And it wouldn't have been if he'd lived, but because he died, it was something that hung around my neck for a while. And there was a point of how can I tell this story? How can I make it? It was a very hard story to tell because you want to tell the facts, but that doesn't mean it's a good story. And so it took me about 10 years to get a handle on how I wanted to do that. And there was other things that came into the other stories are based on real incidences. Flying, that I had to crash land a plane as a student pilot, and so that got inserted into one as a short story, and two was a part of my first book. So there's all little things that I've done that I can exaggerate, stretch. Sometimes I have to minimize because no one would believe it. Yeah, there's all little bits and pieces that I think will make either it's a dramatic scene or it's a complete plot line.
Wow. That's a testament that we as writers got to get out there and live.
Yeah,
Right?
I think
It gives them
I think it is. I think it's also my background is also as an engineer. I used to design equipment that went on oil rigs, and I had a wonderful boss who sadly passed away a few years ago. And we used to have these philosophy discussions of what's the worst thing that can happen with the design. And so he would just basically,
Mhm.
I was fairly young. I started working when I was 16. I didn't go to university or anything. And so by the time I was in my early 20s, I had quite a bit of experience. And so we would sit down and he would say, okay, if I do this, what will go wrong? And I'd be like, oh, well, that will blow up. But if there's a bypass and that would do. But what if that and that is gone? And it would go, that would blow up, but I have this. And eventually it would get to the point after about half an hour of him saying, putting spanners in the works of everything. You'd go, okay, it would be a smouldering mess. There is nothing else we can do. I can't cover those many catastrophic failures at once in a design, and no one will expect me to design. And they go, okay, then we're done. We've got it covered. And I think that is the way I tend to look at everything. Is
That's
whether it's something political, something social. For a story idea, is I'll always go, yeah, but what can go wrong? Something will seem a
How
very
can it get
simple
worse?
solution, but I'll look at it and go, yeah, but you've not thought about this. Um,
Mm,
Terminated was about workplace violence, and it happened at my wife's company that she was
mm,
working at the time, and they said we have a solution, and in about 10 minutes I went, nah, that's going to go wrong 10 different ways, and then I just went, that's a book, and I just started writing how I thought their perfect solution would fall apart in about 50 different ways.
mhm.
And
right.
so I just have that
That's
mentality of
super
looking at
interesting.
issues and then going, how can I break someone's perfect solution to something?
That
Yes,
And
is
that's mine. I love it. Yes, for sure.
yeah.
but the weird thing was you got at that as a pilot as well.
Mhm,
Everything is worked off of dual systems. So you have a mechanical and electrical. You'll have electrical and
Mhm.
hydraulic because they never want anything to rely on one thing. And they do things where you have to do
Right.
testing where they go, okay, you've lost all the hydraulics and or whatever it is, and then like cover up dials because they said those ones won't work, that one won't work, how are you going to fly? You've lost air, you've lost the thing that gives you your compass, so how do you fly now? And you just end up with basically everything covered, even the windshield, and it's now fly. And I think that's the other thing that just reinforces that mentality in my head of going, whatever could be a plot idea, I need to decimate it as a
mhm.
concept. And then that's what
Wow.
gives you conflict.
That's so great. And I love what you said earlier. You're taking real life situations, so the authenticity is there, but you're really examining it, even if it's an experience that you're passionate about, that you have lived, you're still going, yeah, but that's not going to make a good story. And I think as writers, sometimes that's really tricky for us because we get these ideas from our life, right? And then we're married to it. And sometimes that makes for really boring reading. So I love that you
I,
shared that with us.
yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's just something cropped up recently, uh, and I think the hardest things to write is if it's a true life thing that happened to you. You want to tell it as it happened,
Hmm.
but that's not necessarily a narrative story. It's like someone explaining a dream. It was really awesome in my head. It sounds ridiculous. Explain it, and I think it's that thing you have to let go of parts.
Hmm.
It's what is the
Mm,
core nugget idea that will travel for 300 pages,
Right?
and everything else can't follow that path. Some of it won't make it to the page, some of it will be told in a different way. I think it's easier when it's not your personal story and you'll see something in the news or whatever and say, hey, that's a great idea for a story. You don't care about the other people in real life because you don't know them.
yeah.
So you're
Right.
not married to detail and fact.
Right. Yeah, I have a mental
Mhm.
health story that personally happened to me 18 years ago, and it's still not ready to write because I haven't. It's not ready for anyone else yet because it's not interesting. Because as the years go by, I'm starting to okay, that's not going to serve. But right, sometimes that takes time to be able to share things. So
Yeah.
Simon, we see you in a room. Is that your writing room, or can you describe your writing environment and also the routine that
Yeah,
you that
this is
you
my writing room, so it's got all sorts of bits and doings in it. So it's got bits from my it's I got a bookshelf which is just my books. Important books to me are in the background. There's various pictures. There are some from my racing world. There's people that I admire on one wall. I've got original artwork from some of the illustrations that have been in my
Mm.
books on one wall.
Oh,
So I've always managed to have a writing space that I've used, and I just fill it with the things that I suppose make me happy. But no, I just start in the morning. I try to finish late afternoon, but I probably will come back after dinner kind of thing and then work for a bit. I think because I think that's the schedule I always had. Is my wife works full time, so is that thing of try and work when she's working.
so you truly are writing full time and marketing full time.
Yeah, I haven't had a day job in over 15 years, so it is a thing.
Oh, that's
So it
fabulous.
is that thing
Congratulations.
of, but it's that thing of really your workday doesn't never ends. It starts when you get
Right.
up and it stops when you fall asleep, kind of thing.
That's how agenting is for
Yeah,
me.
you don't. Yeah, if I was being completely honest, it doesn't stop, and that's the only really tiring thing is because you're always working on something, whether it's you're playing with it in your head
Mhm.
or whether you've got to plan for something like this or whatever it is.
Right. You can't plan
Mhm.
when you're out with your family or something and you're not working and then some solution pops in your head or something. I mean, you can't turn that off. That's just kind of inherent, I think,
No, I
as a
do. I will
creator.
do that thing of I will write on a napkin
Yes.
or email myself or something,
I do that. I do that
or
myself.
it'll be watching somebody in someone's behavior and you think, and
Mm.
because my wife will see me zone out and say, "Hey, I know something's going on," because you're like going, because
I've been
you
talking to you for 5 minutes, Simon, and you're not there.
no, because you're fascinated by what somebody's doing across the room, and you're like going, "Oh, that's something. That's human behavior I wouldn't have thought about."
Yeah, definitely.
What role does research play in your writing process? You know, especially concerning crime scenes, investigation, criminal psychology. You know, what and how do you like? What's your process on that?
It's a couple of things. One is if I'm trying to work out the logistics of something, I will go and do it and try and do it in real life, sort of thing, and see whether it seems feasible.
Mm-hmm.
So if it takes place at 10 in the morning on this street, what does 10 in the morning on this street look like? Could I get away with doing something in broad daylight? If not, what do I have to change to make it work? If it's this place at 10 at night, what does that look like? What's it sound like? What's it smell like? What obstacles are in the way? So there is a thing of that. I will map it out. I will walk the crime scene, as it were, in that sense. And sometimes it doesn't work. What seems like a great idea doesn't fly. Yeah, it just won't pass the sort of believability aspect. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff is acted out. So it won't be the first time I've been in handcuffs and I'm saying to my wife, "Come on, try and stop me." Um,
That's amazing.
I was just thinking if I need to write a scene where they're robbing a bank, which I actually am in my current draft,
What you
maybe
gonna
I
do
should
there,
go
Heather?
try and rob a
yeah, I wouldn't say no.
I love it. I love it.
But
Yeah,
mainly
you
one of the main things is to I would actually hang out in that bank for an unseasonable amount of
right.
time, just watching what happens for half an hour in the bank. And if possible, and this is like the second half of what I do, is I do a lot of first person interviews. I
Mm.
won't get too buried in reading books. I'll like Google stuff. And I got this from another writer. She said always tries to get the kids' book version of something
yes.
because it's easy to go
Oh.
through that
Yeah.
rather than get the professor's version of Homer's Iliad that'll take you forever to go through. You get the kids edition, you can whip through it and then go, "Oh, I need to now know this and this." But I like to do a lot of first person, so it'll be that thing of, "Oh, I want to speak to this person," because it's usually something they say that is an offhand statement will say more and give you more ideas than if when they give you the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of how something works. But it's that thing of like, I would definitely go into a bank and say, "Hey, what are your security systems?"
Maybe lead with,
Asking for
right?
a
I'm an
friend.
author. Yeah, I'm asking for a friend. How would I rob this bank if
And can
my
you
friend
help me
wanted
put
to?
this ski mask on? It's just I like to immerse myself. It's fine.
Can you imagine walking into that bank wanting to make a deposit and seeing that? Oh my goodness. Be there when you do it, please.
You're
I
going to
would
help
help you.
me.
Perfect. Yes.
But I will. My main thing is they can only say no if you
Yep.
ask them.
Right.
So I have sat down with a lot of unusual people with unusual jobs, or and then just gone through what it is for their day job. The first one I think I ever did in any great depth. I remember when I first started out writing, I thought I've got no book to hold up to show that I am not a lunatic. When I go and ask somebody, because so we pretended to be somebody. I think we pretended to be journalists and spoke to the FAA about a
Oh,
plane crash thing for the first book and completely bluffed our way through that. But then when I did Pay in the Piper, I wanted to do something about kidnapping. I wanted to do a kidnap story, but I wanted to do it differently. So I end up speaking to people who did kidnap and ransom, and
wow.
I have the FBI's playbook on
Wow.
that, and it's choose your own adventure. It says if you're
Wow.
going to do this, skip to, or if the situation is this, you need to do this. Go to section 3. If it's this, go to section 9. And it's a very interesting procedural way of doing it. But I literally went into the FBI and said, I want to kidnap a child. How would I do it? And they said, we'd catch you. And I said, no, but I want to do it. And he goes, no, you don't understand. We would catch you. And I said, okay. And I got in with a plot idea and they destroyed it in about 3 minutes. And it was like, but I want to do, and they go, we'll catch you. And I said, okay, I want to be caught on page 300. I don't want to be caught on page 6.
Mm,
And so it was a thing of having, instead of me telling them what I wanted to do, I had them tell me what they would do. And then I just sat there with my, going back to my, how can I break your system? It
Right.
was then go back to it and go, okay, I know you said you do this, but you're not considering this or this. So I can now have a plot point. My villain has a way in now
Hmm.
because you guys, none of your procedures cover this as a topic
mm,
or as a problem. And so it was just finding things to pick holes in or make things dramatic on things that they would do. So
Right.
I like first person stuff because it interviews, because it's just that thing of, one, I don't have to read stuff, and two, I can pick someone's brain. And
mm-hmm,
it's just
Hmm.
one of those things that, and it doesn't always go right. You won't get people who will talk to you, so you have to make stuff up to a certain extent
Hmm.
because you just can't penetrate their want to share information. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a government thing or whatever it is. It can be just you want to speak to people who are victims of something and they don't want to talk.
Hmm.
When I did the one that got away, which is about a woman dealing with survivor's guilt, I wanted to speak to women's groups about that, and I could not get into those. They did
Mm.
not want to talk about it, which is understandable. And I was saying, I'm not here to use your ideas or whatever, but I just want to understand the situation
mm-hmm,
better. And but I could not get into those groups, and I was okay with it. I understood their need for privacy and things like that, and that they're, like you were saying, 18 years later, you're not willing to talk about it or be able to write about it. For some people, then still not willing to talk about it.
mm-hmm,
So to tackle that mindset, I went about it a different way. I was advised to go to the Veterans Administration
mm,
to talk about survivor's guilt, and that gave me
Yeah.
openings because we end up talking, end up spending a lot of time with somebody, and end up analyzing me, making me put myself in those situations or things in my life that are in the same wheelhouse as other people. So it gave me an opening.
So I'm sure it varies, but how long does research usually take for you And do you draft in between that, or do you go play and do your interviews and then sit in the seat?
I usually go and play.
Okay.
I outline very simply and very briefly, and then it'd be that thing of, oh, I want to do something that is a car chase or something, and they say, so I need to go and play with that for a day to make sure how that will work. Or it might be the thing of, I know I need to get from A to D, but I don't know what B and C is. And then it'll be like, I need to go and talk to somebody. I need to get some
Oh, yeah.
ideas of how I can fill the gap between flashpoint to showdown. What are the bits that I need to get from there to there? Because at the moment, I'm just pulling stuff out and it doesn't feel that cohesive as an idea. And it's usually when I need to go and talk to people who've done this, experienced this,
Mm-hmm.
or have felt this in some way that I want to do that. I spoke to the parole people, parole board, and then
Yes.
it's like, how would someone who goes on parole for this crime operate? And they said, I wouldn't have this in their history because they'd be so tied down, your character wouldn't be able to skip out because they'd be controlled this way. And he goes, and if they're on this, and it broke down some of the rules that you see in TVs and movies and things of going, oh, that's not really how you think of the parole board working, or
Right.
how someone on parole will actually live.
Example only took 10 minutes to get back.
Oh yeah, there is all that. That's a problem in a lot of things that take your
Sure.
story will take place over 2 weeks, and they won't even done any kind of investigation by then. I always think it's funny because I've literally just finished a civil suit that I had to sue somebody, and that took nearly 3 years, and that was a minor civil suit.
Hmm.
And it's like the idea that your murder trial will happen
Right.
next week after the arrest is just not something that's realistic.
Oh, we lived through
Yeah,
OJ.
exactly.
We know.
Oh, goodness.
Oddly enough, I was just speaking to somebody about OJ, and I thought, how did those jurors do? Because they were on the jury for a year. What did you tell your boss? I can
Right.
be in next June. I don't know how that would have gone down.
Yeah.
I think it must have just totally turned their whole lives upside down.
Yeah, I can't imagine. The
Yeah.
odd thing was,
Mental health.
we were working in Vegas, and we saw OJ being arrested in the parking lot of that casino many years ago for that weird thing where he fought over memorabilia with people that sent him back to jail or whatever it was. So that was very weird to walk into OJ and paparazzi, all sort of like as he walks out of being led out of the casino.
Hmm. It's wild.
Wow. Okay, so Simon, you have an impressive background in psychology as well. How much does that influence the way you develop your characters, and how do you develop these characters to make them compelling but also so terrifying?
My background isn't that I'm a psychologist or anything like that, so I'd want to get that out of the way. It's just that I will talk to psychologists and try and get into that thing of, I try to build people up, or fictional people, I should clarify. It is that thing of going, oh, it's something I impress on people in writing classes, which I know Nicki might be aware of, is I go, they just can't be bad.
Yeah.
Stop saying they are bad. There's got to
Right.
be a foundation to that. And it doesn't mean it doesn't matter if it's the hero, the villain, a side character or something like that. Is there's got to be something at the root. No one comes out of the oven on first day of birth and it's like they are a psychopath.
Right.
And so I think
Right.
it's just that thing of, if I get into discussions with someone about the personality traits, and if they start explaining the personality traits, you start getting things of going, oh, so how did they grow up? What was their home life like? What was some of the life experiences that they would have had to get them there? Is that you end up, it's that
Hmm.
usually it's that thing of like, someone in life, and it's usually, even if it's the hero, what you're trying to do is take away their options. You're trying to take away their safety nets. You're trying to control them in a way that they have to act the way they're going to act. And that's what your villain does. It picks away at their hero's life, and they are stuck on a course of action because the cops aren't going to help them, their friends aren't going to help them, and so you're trying to do that. But then the other way is when you're creating backstory. I'm trying to do something similar, even if it never makes it in the book. Is that I do have some idea of their life experience of how they built up to the person they are, because it takes effort to be blunt, to be a dick in life. So what is it that you can do? So some of it is just observation, some of it is just through talking to people, and it's things that suddenly start to pop out at you when you hear someone talk, or you see something that is they've been, it's like, well, what's underneath that? And it's weird things. When I watched the documentary about the flat earth people, which was very fascinating, because they speak to a
Yeah.
psychologist and he says to him, I guarantee every one of these people has lost something in life, and this is a
Hmm.
way of regaining importance. So you got into it, and they started interviewing people as they were going into a meeting, and there were people like lost a marriage, lost their home, lost their job, which did lose a marriage, which did lose a home. And this is a way of saying, if I say this is this, then I'm important. You're listening to me now. I had status before, and this is a way of regaining status. And you see the same traits, whether it's gang behavior or whether it's people who fall into conspiracy theories or militias or something. You get back to it. It's people trying to take control, trying to get that thing of essentially trying to reclaim esteem. And then you'd like go, okay, so if I'm going to use that sort of MO for a character, is like, how has that person lost their way in life? How have they fallen off life's tightrope? And you start building up little stories, ideas, and experiences for them, and then you have that as a character, so that their behavior, I won't say is justifiable, but is understandable.
Hmm.
And I think that's
Right.
what I try to do, is just trying to find something. And like I say, may only use maybe a couple of little examples. Some of it will be exposition, but some of it will give you that hint of
Right.
past life.
This is also fascinating. So, how do you?
I
I know.
know. I love the I love the
Me too.
explanation of what the villain is doing to the protagonist, right? Like the
Yeah.
hero. They're like taking away all their I mean, I know that's a small thing to focus on, but like when he was explaining that, my brain was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's exactly what happened."
I suppose it's the hurdle that I also hammer into people, is if you're going to do the amateur sleuth, is like, how many times have you gone out and investigated a crime all by yourself just because? You somehow have to jump the hurdle of, why don't you leave it to the cops?
Right.
And so it's got to be that thing of, you've got to find a way of, okay, the only option is that the hero's going to do this.
Hmm.
Because it's the thing of going, if you've got cat and mouse between hero and villain, and your villain does something to the hero, it's like going 911, hello, and the book ends, because
And done.
that's what everybody would do.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
then it's that thing of like,
Yeah.
how do you remove the police element from the story, that they can't call 911. It's that thing of, okay, once we remove that element, how can we remove the faith of their friends from them? How can we remove,
Mhm.
whatever their little world is with their support systems, whether it's governmental or whether it's friendship or whether it's professional? How can I chip away at all those things that made them, that they can't rely on them, that forces them down a road that they're going to have to, if they want this problem to go away, they're the only one who can make it go away, and that they're going to have to do some things that they never thought they would do, and they're going to have to face off against a villain for whatever reason. And I think it's that, and whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be a thriller. It can be romance, it can be sci-fi. It's just the thing you're doing. You're creating enough conflict or enough headaches that your hero can't rely on institutions of any kind in their
Hmm.
life.
So, speaking of headaches, how thrillers obviously lots of suspense. So, how do you keep the pacing and tension going without your reader being completely exhausted?
Um, I hope they are exhausted, I think.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
But I think there is
I guess a balance. Maybe the balance is the
I
right word.
think there's various things. I think I always try to start with something provocative, something that is I think one, because I'm trying to catch a reader's eye,
Sure.
and so it's that thing of, okay, I need to have something big, bold, and provocative that make people go ooh, and that will buy me 25 pages after that to come up with the next sort of thing. And then I think it's just the thing of building escalation. Okay, if this is my big thing at the beginning, that can't be the biggest, shiniest thing that's going to happen in the book. I can come down a
Right.
bit, but then I've got to be ratcheting up so the showdown is bigger than the opening bang. So there is a kind of escalation from that. But when you're dealing with a person's life, there will be other influences. So there is that thing of bringing some sort of subplot in, which will be just another crisis, but it'll have a different shape and feel to the, if you like, the big showdown between hero and villain that you're building to. So everything is a distraction, even if it is an emotional distraction or a moral distraction that they've got to deal with. So it's that thing of not everything has to be a car chase or an explosion that is going to be a problem for them. It's going to be other things in their life, and even their own personal character is going to be tested. So what will that look like? So those are the, I always think I have emotional moments and I have action moments. And it's that thing of switching between them so that like you say, it isn't that thing of it literally is someone shouting in your face for the length of the book.
Right.
Sometimes thrillers do kind of make me so tired I have to just put them down for a minute.
And I think I work off of some sort of reader feedback on that. My wife is my first reader, and
Mm.
sometimes she'll go, "It's missing something." And one of the books I completely had to add something that I hadn't even envisaged putting in, just based on a backhand comment that she gave me. And then there's that other thing of, oh, this is a little intense. I think one of the things I had a 10-page fight scene, and she said, enough already. And I'm going, but it's really good. I acted it out all afternoon with the cat. And she, yeah, I don't want to read it though. And so lose eight
Yeah.
pages
Oh, whoa.
because
That's a
she's
lot,
going,
but yeah.
it's this knockdown, drag out fight, and she goes, "It's just way too long." Yeah, we get it, and went, oh, "I'll make it 4."
Kill your darlings.
Yeah, so it is that thing of too much isn't necessarily good, but also it's that thing of reading reader comments after the book's come out, kind of thing. 'Cause everybody's going to have different taste, everybody's going to have a different opinion. No two people read the book the same way and experience it, so that's something you just have to be okay with. But sometimes you will get something that is said and you're like going, yeah, maybe I could do that better next time. And the next book won't resemble the one that I've just finished, but it's that thing of like having it in your head of going, I can maybe tackle this differently next time. Maybe I should be a little bit more cognizant of this as an issue if I'm getting that back from enough of a sizable pool that I can go, oh, maybe they do have a point there.
Mm.
You need to watch yourself a little bit more.
So, one thing I love, this is actually one of my favorite things to find in my query inbox, is when, like, I find a really great plot twist in a book. So, how do you approach plot twists, and do you plan red herrings from the beginning, or do you weave them in as the story develops?
I sometimes I don't consciously think about something, and I don't consciously think about placing red herrings per se, but plot twists I do. And because of one of my favorite writers does it, I try to have something that completely changes the way you're looking at the story at the quarter stage, half stage, and three-quarter stage, so that it won't be on the button, but I'm aiming for something in those areas, just so that your expectation is changed. Whether it's a revelation, whether it's a screw up, that it's like, oh, the villain was going to do this, hero was going to do this, and it's like it's gone completely somewhere else. And so that changes the direction for the next 50, 60 pages because of that. So I try to do that. The only other thing I try to do, why I won't say I plant red herrings, but what I'm always trying to do is I'm a fan of close-up magic, but I do like magicians. I do watching magicians, and sometimes I've watched a magician do the same act again and again, and you'll notice how they won't do the trick the same way twice.
Hmm.
Because what they have to do is, and this is what I try to do, is that thing of, I want you to look there. I want you to look there because I'm doing something over here. So it's that thing of like you trying to make the reader have a certain expectation. I'm trying to make them think about the story going in this direction. And it's that thing of going, I want you to look at this, and I'm going to put weight on this sort of like plot development that is not what you is not going where you think it's going, because I'm going to go ta-da and do something too. Because I watched it literally was at a friend's birthday party, and his sister had hired a magician, and I watched the magician do the same trick 3 times. Very simple trick. It was the thing with a playing card, tears a thing off, and it's like, where's that going to magically appear? And they appeared in the little wet nap packet.
Oh,
It was
wow.
in there, and so he would have 3, and obviously he's planted whatever it is, the corner is in one of them, and so someone would go, which is it? Is it in this one or this one over here? And someone would go, it's that one, or they would pick one, and he would go, and if it was the right one first time, he would go, oh, here you are, is this your card? If they didn't pick that right one, he had a completely follow-up thing to guide you to get you to
Oh,
pick that one. If you watched him operate the same trick 3 times, he had to do it differently every time, because he had to lead you to the card. And it just made me think, it's like, I need to lead the reader down a certain path,
mhm.
then completely surprise them by jerking it out from underneath them. But I want the reader to start thinking about things, but I will do it completely differently. There's you know, there's a thing in kidnapping when they do money drops. It's like, how do you do a money drop? And one of the most interesting things that I saw was they will tell you to drive down a big long highway for 50 miles, and we'll tell you when you get there, you're going to go to the phone box. You're going to dial this number, which is on a sticky note underneath the phone book. And you go, and you're going to do that, and you're going to go, okay, I'll do that. They drive there, 25 miles in, they'll T-bow you in a truck, take the stuff, and leave you on the street. But the whole point is, you think you're going over here,
Yeah.
but the kidnapper has no intention. There is no phone box, there is no sticky note, but your expectation, your need is you want to go there. And then the kidnappers will do something completely different to you. And that's how I will plan a deception or a red herring, is that thing of, I want to put into the reader's head, this is going to happen. But it never is. I'm going to somehow
Hmm.
subvert it in a way.
That's
Mhm.
fascinating.
So we're kind of coming to the end here, unfortunately, but what are your recommendations for either new thriller writers or just writers in general that are writing to genre? Do you recommend they do any resources or tips? Besides
Mm,
taking your class, of course,
yeah,
or classes, I should say.
just keep reading, because you don't want to come up with a tired idea. That was last year's book, and you've just come up with the same idea. And I think there is just that thing of, you do need to plan. I know there's some people who can write and seat their pants and all that sort of stuff, but I do think you need to play that idea over in your head, and keep playing that idea over in your head of like, how can you make this exciting? How can you make this interesting? But I think the main thing for me is, if you're doing something that is a thriller, just feel that it's that thing of like, you're always trying to prevent a bigger calamity from happening. And I think that's how it differs from a mystery. Is a mystery is reactive. The crime has already happened on
Mhm.
page 1. Whereas in a thriller, the crime hasn't happened. A crime has happened, but the big thing is going to be the big
Hmm.
climax. And I think that's the thing, is you're working to prevent something. It's more proactive as a storytelling style.
Thank you.
What has been your most challenging book to write, and what were some lessons you learned from that
Hmm.
process?
Big writer lesson I gave myself, I think, was Paying the Piper. That was my second book. And that was the one about a kidnapping story. And I went to the FBI and they gave me this mammoth amount of information. And I felt beholden to tell it
Mm.
as it happened. So the first draft was 140,000 words.
Mm.
And I ran into an immediate problem because my editor said, yeah, that's 40,000 words too long. Because it was mass paperback at the time. And they said, to
Yeah.
charge $7.99, we need to have that wrapped up in, I think it was like less than 400 printed pages. And he goes, 140,000 words is more than 400 printed pages. Get that thing down. And it was like, I got to cut 40,000 words. But the main thing was, when reading it, it was such a stale book to read because it was so procedural, and not just procedural. It was like going to work procedural. Of like, they will do this, they will do that, they will. And in the end, I had to speak to the person, my FBI contact. And I said, I'm going to have to take liberties with this. And he said, okay, that's not a problem. He goes, just make sure you don't quote me, and just make sure it's within the bounds of it, sort of thing. And I just had to attack the book completely differently. And I did. I shed 45,000 words from it, made it
Wow.
way more dramatic, made it way more interesting. And like you say, if you're writing about something that is based on real life, it's very hard to let go of the things that don't make that a good narrative story. And I just had to get rid of the thing of going, I've got all this research and information, I've got to shove it in this story, whether you like it or not. And to be honest, you can't do that. And so it was just a thing of me just coming to that realization of research is lovely, but you might end up with 20,000 words of research and you'll do the thing of going, they wear a tie on Tuesdays, is the only really relative piece of information that you'll include in the story. Everything else doesn't matter. So it was just that thing of being able to let go and just remember, story comes first, fact can trail along behind. You don't have to be completely beholden to it. And I think that was an early lesson that really stuck with me.
That's great.
That is
Can
great.
you share a sneak peek or hint about any upcoming projects you're working on?
I'm still working on some A.D. Westlake stories for new books, but the one thing I am working on is called Let Me Shoot You, and it's about a
There's the
photographer.
title.
But it's a photographer.
Yeah.
So it's about a young man who has to find his wayward brother. His brother is an alcoholic and essentially is just wandering around. So his brother comes from a family that has some money, and so his mother is dying of cancer. So he is on this journey to bring the brother home before she
Mm.
dies. And so that is the setup. But what it is that he's running up against is there's a killer who preys on the homeless under the guise of being a photographer. And the young brother has to pretty much go all the way with this killer to find his brother. And I won't say how or
Wow.
Yes, of course
Do,
yeah,
not.
do you know when we'll get to find out how?
next year.
Next year? Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Simon, thank you so much. This has been so fascinating and just we
Yeah,
appreciate your
very
time. So
fun.
thank you.
No worries.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.